Welcome back to the episode. I have a really good topic today I want to talk about, and I feel like this comes up a lot. In fact, this was something that I even experienced myself, and I want to give you some tips on how to get through it. And I hear from a lot of people talking about this as well. It's like, what do you do when you are leaning into your desires and you're wanting to live this life by your design, but your partner isn't on board? So we're going to get into that. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you a little bit about what's going on in my life right now, what I have coming up. First of all, I am so excited. I booked a family vacation this summer to Newfoundland, which is my home province. And you guys, like, this is going to be such an epic vacation. I'm not going to talk about all the details right now. I will do an episode afterwards, but I really want to almost be tourist in my own province and just really observe and witness the magic of that island. I grew up there. I moved away when I was 17. I feel like when you live on an island, you want to get off of the island. And so that was my case and the case for my sisters as well. But my parents still live there. And so I'm so excited to go back and just really like take on and just absorb just the magic of just being on an island. There's so many fun things to do, and I want to live off the land. I want to go fishing. I want to go whale watching. And so I'm super excited about that. I have a couple of changes coming up with my business. I did decide to cut out or discontinue the basic human design reading only because it doesn't support what I view human design as. So I view human design as an incredible tool to help you really identify who you are specifically and separate you from everyone else. Like, what are your gifts? What's your journey looking like? What's your purpose? What's your evolutionary process? And the basic human design reading, which is all about your type, authority, and strategy, doesn't support that. It's great information. I think we need to dive deeper. So I decided to remove that and just keep the other human design readings. And then also I have this really fun masterclass coming up soon. I don't have the specifics on it, but I've already started to outline it. So I just wanted to drop some breadcrumbs around it to keep your eyes and ears peeled for it. It's called Fuck the Fear. And it's a masterclass all about where does fear come from? Why do we feel fear? And how do we do it anyways while being scared, right? Like how do we move through it? How do we work towards our goals? And how do we not self-sabotage, right? How do we fuck the fear and do it anyways? So keep your eyes peeled on that. It might even be launching and available by the time this podcast episode comes out, but I'm super excited about it and it's gonna be super fun. So let's get into it. We're talking about fears with this masterclass. I mean, I feel like this is a great episode of what happens when your partner isn't on board, when you're wanting to and choosing to live this life by your design. And that could be scary, right? Like you are starting to see things a little bit differently. You are seeking evidence to confirm this new belief that you have or a new filter that you have, and things just look different. And your partner may not be on board. They might think it's just silly hogwash talk or, doesn't really exist, especially when you're talking about words like manifestation and speaking words into existence and law of attraction, all that stuff. When you start talking like that, or even human design, and your partner isn't on board with any of the metaphysical stuff, it can feel a little daunting. And then you're probably wanting to try to convince that person to listen, to see your side, because you notice a difference so much in yourself. And that's going to create more resistance. So here are some tips of what you can do when your partner isn't on board. And I've been through this, and I'll share some stuff at the end of how things are. So I think the first thing is don't worry about your partner, right? Worrying about your partner and having your partner see your side and get frustrated that your partner is saying this is ridiculous. I'm not going to think that way. You there's a phrase that we use in our house where I do me, you do you, where I will stick with what lights me up and you stick with what lights you up. Stick with what lights you up. And it's kind of that same essence where you kind of just do what feels good to you, right? Of course, if you're not hurting anyone or, doing anything to sabotage the relationship, but stick with things that light you up. And by that whole aspect of doing the things that light you up, that raise your vibration. And because of law of transmutation, which we haven't talked about the laws of attraction, that's a podcast I'll have coming up soon, laws of attraction, the universal laws, which is a podcast I have coming up soon. There is a law called law of transmutation where the frequency will transmute to a higher frequency when it's around, like lower vibrations will transmute to higher vibrations when it's around higher vibration. And so when you are living and feeling into this higher frequency and raising your vibration, there will be this evolutionary process in your relationship for the most part. So here are some things that I do, or I did do, and I stopped listening to podcasts with my headphones on and just having me listen. Like I would play it and have the words, being played out in the house. And sometimes he would say something, sometimes he wouldn't say something, but I was doing things that I enjoyed and like just having almost like having it out there. There was no resistance around it. I'm like, I'm going to play it, I'm going to listen to it, and we'll see what happens. I would use the language that I would want to use around him, right? So I didn't edit myself. And that's a big thing. You don't want to edit yourself. You don't want to shrink down. You don't want to make yourself small just so you can feel accepted by your partner. You want to be who you are and step into all of you, right? And so use the words that you want to use. So I would often use the words like manifesting, and I would talk about law of attraction. I would also talk about law of action, intuitive hits, intuitive nudges. And I started talking to my kids about like manifesting. And guess what happened? I mean, this was a few years ago when I started to do this. I started noticing him using those words too. And he started picking it up without even realizing. We'd be in conversation and he'd be like, yeah, you have to be careful you don't manifest it, or something like that. And I remember him saying it to our kids too. And sometimes he would say it and he'll look up and do like a little like smile as if like, do you see what I did there? Do you see what I just did? Like aware that he was adapting the language. And so there is, again, that law of transmutation. There's like that piece that adapts to the higher vibration around you. You can't help but do that. And so don't edit yourself. Use the words you want to use. Listen to the podcast you want to listen to. Read the books. Have the book out. And ask him if he wants to listen to it. Like I love tarot cards, and he's not into it. He's never has been. And so I used oracle cards. And I think a couple months ago he had always said no. And then a couple of months ago I was like, I had some oracle cards out. I'm like, do you want to pull a card? And he's like, okay. And the funny thing is they were goddess cards, which is probably not the best card for a guy to pull who really isn't as in touch with that feminine energetics, right? Like not like feminine side, but the feminine energetics. We all both have both masculine and feminine. Men almost need to be more in that divine masculine energy, but also understand the feminine energetics, and women who are not wounded, who are grounded, they're grounded in their feminine energy. And they also understand the masculine. Masculine's all about the doing, the productivity. So of course there are elements of being in the masculine energy. Me being in this podcast, talking about this podcast, I'm in my masculine energy because I'm in my doing, right? So, but anyways, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. So it's him picking out these goddess cards. I'm like, oh crap. He's not going to resonate with the language, the flory, feminine words that were in there, but he was opened up to it. So, just don't edit yourself, basically, is what I'm getting at with this. Also, embody the type of relationship you want. Like if you had like this relationship where he was on board with what you're doing, what would that relationship look like? And how would you come at it? Most likely you would come at it, by being open and learning about his interests, right? You would want to learn about what he's doing. It's not necessarily all like shutting down and like, I don't want to learn what you're doing because it's not what I'm doing or whatever. Like having that interest and being open and interested in learning, then there is that reciprocation where he'll like lean in and be more interested in you as well. So again, it's not editing, being open, being less resistant, and having more vibration overall, more frequency, and embodying that person. I also am a big fan of like visualizing and scripting and meditating like almost like a visualizing, where like a guided visualization where you can put music on and you're visualizing what you want your relationship to look like. What would it feel like? How would it feel lean into? Scripting is very similar, but you're actually writing it out, and you're writing out a like a future scene that has already happened. So you're writing out as if it's already happened. I've done this several times, and there are times that things have happened exactly the way that I have scripted out, which I need to do it more often. But like of course, your subconscious mind is like, well, that didn't happen. That's ridiculous. But if you kind of approach it by saying, I can't believe this happened, which already kind of softens your ego or your subconscious mind that this is a possibility that could happen, and you talk as if something had already happened, right? Oh my gosh, I can't believe this just happened. I've been like wanting this to happen, and it actually happened, and you talk about it. Using those tools like scripting and visualizing and meditating to, again, lean into the desires that you want for your life, to lean into that embodiment of who you are in this type of relationship that you want. And do you see the difference between doing all that versus harping claws out? Can't you see? Why don't you look at it the way I look at it? Like, it's a completely different frequency. It's also important, I think this is something that needs to be talked about a lot more, especially if you're someone, and I can be like this and for sure have been like this in the past, where if I feel like threatened, I think I might have talked about this on an episode about like the relationship through like the lens of like a couples counselor, but like where if I felt like the relationship being threatened, or if I felt like, if I was being triggered, I guess is the better word. If I was being triggered, I would want to kind of do everything I can to like my reaction would be to like badger him. Like, is everything okay? Like, are we okay? And his reaction would be to withdraw more, which then triggered me more, right? And so, so going back to the whole concept of wanting someone to see it your way and like almost not forcing it, but all this resistance can impact and interfere with your partner's journey, right? And what I mean by that is that your partner's on his or her own journey, own sacred contracts, own lessons he needs. I'm going to say he because I'm talking specifically regarding like, I'm assuming I'm talking to a woman who's married to a man, but insert whatever pronoun you want to insert there. But he's on his own journey. He has his own contracts. He has his own experiences. And then when you interfere with that, you can actually interfere with his free will, where you're making him choose something that he doesn't want to choose. You can actually have a karmic debt put on your lifeline, right? Because you are interfering with someone else's free will. And so when you work with like energetic healers, a lot of times like they'll ask you, do I have your permission? Or they'll ask like, I needed to ask if I had that person's permission, because if they go ahead and do something without knowing if they have their permission, that can actually be a karmic debt put on their lifeline, and that could stay on their lifeline for many generations if the future incarnation of that soul doesn't learn that doesn't pay back that karmic debt. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, but the whole point being is living your life with your free will, with the things that you want to do. Don't edit yourself. Don't shrink yourself. Don't be small just so because you're scared to talk about it, or you're afraid that this person, you're upset or frustrated this person doesn't see it the way you see it. In time, that will happen. Yes, there are exceptions to that. But in time, it can I will say in time, it can happen because of that law of transmutation, just the way that the frequency looks, and just you being yourself, right? And being open and having the higher vibration, you're going to pull things into your aura. You're going to pull things into your life. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed this short, brief conversation all about like what to do when your partner is not on board. If you like this podcast, I appreciate it if you leave a review, have a 5-star rating and review on, I think that's on Apple iTunes, and share it on Instagram. Just tag me at I am Karen Galway, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye.